Happy Thursday! It's the afternoon now. I just finished all of my school of the day, and I want to talk about my sunrise experience this morning. And I have two passages from books that are inspiring my thoughts for the day. I essentially watched or felt the earth get brighter from my kitchen. There was no actual sun to be seen, but you definitely experience the world getting lighter by looking out the window, so that's what I did. And I was in a complete flow of work. I was doing a project that I was really excited about, and I just kind of worked on it for the hour or so. And the sun, it went from being really dark outside to being fairly bright outside. I'm going to read from them. From Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. He has this chapter on having good working habits, and one of the habits he brings up is clearing your desk of all things except the immediate matter at hand. Essentially making sure that your desk is clear of all papers, all folders, anything except what you're doing at the immediate moment. He brings in this quote, which I think is very well articulated, and it's, "A person with his desk piled high with papers on various matters will find his work much easier and more accurate if he clears that desk of all but the immediate problem on hand. I call this good housekeeping, and it is the #1 step towards efficiency." He has a story in this book that I really like. It's about an executive at a large Chicago firm that was having a nervous breakdown. He was very tense and anxious a lot of the time, so he goes to a famous psychiatrist called Dr. Sadler, and they kind of have this 10-minute interaction in which he really changed his work habits. I'm just going to read directly from the book. "While this man was telling me his story," Dr. Sadler says, "my telephone rang. It was the hospital calling, and instead of deferring the matter, I took the time right away to come to a decision. I always settle questions, if possible, right on the spot. I had no sooner hung up than the phone rang again. Again, an urgent matter, which I took time to discuss. The third interruption came when a colleague of mine came to my office for advice on a patient who was critically ill. When I had finished him, I turned to my caller and began to apologize for keeping him waiting. But he had brightened up. He had a completely different look on his face. 'Don't apologize, doctor,' this man said," the Chicago executive. "In the last 10 minutes, I think I've got a hunch on what is wrong with me. I'm going to go back to my office and revise my working habits. But before I go, do you mind if I take a look at your desk?" Dr. Sadler opened up the drawers of his desk, all empty except for the supplies. "Tell me," said the patient, "where do you keep your unfinished business?" "Finished," said Sadler. "And where do you keep your unanswered mail?" "Answered," Sadler told him. "My rule is to never lay down a letter until I've answered it. I dictate the reply to my secretary at once." 6 weeks later, the same executive invited Dr. Sadler to come to his office. He was changed, and so was his desk. He opened up the drawers, showed that there was no unfinished business inside of them. 6 weeks ago," the executive said, "I had 3 different desks in 2 different offices and was snowed under by my work. It was never finished. After talking to you, I came back here and cleared my desk out of a wagon load of reports and old papers. Now I work at one desk, settle things as they come up, and don't have a mountain of unfinished business nagging at me, making me tense and worried. But the most astonishing thing is I've recovered completely. There is nothing wrong with my health." I love that story because it reminds me that when you have piles and piles of things that you just start and you never finish, or you're always thinking about when to finish next, you're always thinking about exactly that. But if things come and you settle them, if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it right away. If it's something that you need to schedule in your calendar, schedule it so it's not on your mind. It's an old, amazing book written in the 1900s and I think like 1940s or so. And it reminded me of a different book called The Lean Startup. I'm going to read another passage that I think the two of them are actually very cohesive and are essentially saying the same thing. Anyway, in the book Lean Thinking, James Womack and Daniel Jones recount a story of stuffing newsletters into envelopes with the assistance of one of the author's 2 young children. Every envelope had to be addressed, stamped, filled with a letter, and sealed. The daughters, ages 6 and 9, knew how they should go about completing the project. "Daddy, you first fold all the newsletters, then you should attach the seal, and then you should put on the stamps." The father wanted to do it in a counterintuitive way. Complete each envelope one at a time. They, like most of us, thought that was backwards, explaining to him that that wouldn't be efficient. He and his daughters each took half of the envelopes and competed to see who would finish first. The father won the race, and not just because he's an adult. It happened because the one envelope at a time approach is a faster way of getting the job done, even though it seems inefficient. This has been confirmed by many studies, including one that was recorded on video. The one envelope at a time approach is called single-piece flow in lean manufacturing. It works because of the surprising power of small batches. When we do work that proceeds in stages, the batch size refers to how much work moves from one stage to the next at a time. For example, if we were stuffing 100 envelopes, the intuitive way to do it, folding 100 letters at a time, we would have a batch size of 100. So before we get from one step to another, you have to finish 100 steps. Single piece flow is named so because it's a batch size of 1. Why does stuffing one envelope at a time get the job done faster even though it seems like it would go slower? Because our intuition doesn't take into account the extra time required to sort, stack, and move around the large pieces of half-complete envelopes when it's done the other way. It seems more efficient to repeat the same task over and over, in part because we expect that we will get better at this simple task the more we do it. Unfortunately, in process-oriented work like this, individual performance is not nearly as important as the overall performance of the system. Even if the time that each process took was exactly the same, the small batch production approach will still be superior for even more counterintuitive reasons. For example, imagine that the letters didn't fit the envelopes. With the large batch approach, we wouldn't find that out until nearly the end. With the small batches, we'd know almost immediately. What if the envelopes are defective and won't seal? In the large batch approach, we'd have to unstuff all the envelopes, get new ones, and restuff them. In the small batch approach, we'd find this out immediately and have no rework required. What if it turns out that the customers didn't want the product? Which process would allow the company to find out sooner? Anyway, love these two books. Love the methodology of doing things right away, but doing them towards completion versus incremental steps. And that's why, now that I am transitioning from school to doing other stuff for the day, my room is entirely clean. My binder is completely folded. Everything is complete. I've revised all my lessons, like everything is done, and now I don't have to think about that. That is amazing. I have full brain power to move on, to do the next thing. It's so exciting. Happy Thursday, and have a great day.